By the way, there's another beautiful Armada floating beautifully toward Iran right now.
The United States and Iran stand at a dangerous crossroads, with the largest American naval deployment to the region in recent memory, and Iranian forces on high alert with what they call fingers on the trigger. This isn't just a regional dispute. What happens in the coming days could affect oil prices at your local gas station, global markets, and potentially draw the world into a broader conflict. Let's break down what's happening, why it matters, and what could come next. It started with a post. On January 28th, President Donald Trump took to Truth Social with a stark warning to Iran. He announced that a massive armada, larger than the naval force recently used in Venezuela, is heading toward Iranian waters. His message was clear and direct. Iran must agree to a new nuclear deal with no nuclear weapons, or face consequences. Trump stated the force is ready, willing, and able to rapidly fulfill its mission, with speed and violence, if necessary. He added a chilling reference, saying any future action would be far worse than the strikes the US carried out last June. We'll get to those in a moment, because they're key to understanding just how serious this threat is. Iran's response was swift and defiant. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Iranian forces are ready to retaliate immediately and powerfully to any aggression. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, declared its forces are on high alert, accusing the US of psychological warfare. But here's what's interesting. While Iranian officials are projecting strength, they've also left a door open. They say they're willing to engage in what they call dignified talks, but absolutely refuse to negotiate under threat or coercion. So we have two sides, both armed, both warning each other, but also both signaling that diplomacy isn't completely dead. The question is, how long does that window stay open?
And by the way, there's another beautiful Armada floating beautifully toward Iran right now.
Let's talk about what Trump called the massive Armada, because the scale here is significant. At the center is the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, which just entered the Middle East after transiting from the South China Sea. This is a Nimitz-class nuclear-powered supercarrier, essentially a floating military base with 6,000 to 7,000 personnel aboard. The carrier alone carries about 65 aircraft, F-35C stealth fighters, F/A 18 Super Hornets, electronic warfare planes, and early warning aircraft. It's protected by at least 3 destroyers, a guided missile cruiser, and likely a submarine we can't see. But that's just the beginning. The Abraham Lincoln isn't alone. Intelligence suggests the USS George H.W. Bush Carrier Group may also be heading to the region, though its exact destination remains unclear. In the Persian Gulf and Red Sea, we have additional destroyers, 3 littoral combat ships equipped for mine warfare. Air Force assets include 35 F-15E Strike Eagles in Jordan, F-22 Raptors in the UAE, and more than 20 refueling tankers in Qatar. Add in missile defense systems, THAAD and Patriot batteries, and the total US military presence in the Middle East right now is estimated at 40,000 to 50,000 troops. To put it simply, this is not a bluff. This is a combat-ready force positioned for rapid action. Understanding US military positioning here is crucial. These are the key hubs from which any operation would be coordinated. You're looking at major air bases in Qatar, the UAE, Jordan, and Kuwait. Naval facilities in Bahrain. These bases house the command centers, aircraft, and logistics that would support any strike operation. What's important to understand is that Iran knows exactly where these bases are, and in the event of conflict, they would be primary targets for Iranian retaliation. That's what happened after the June 2025 strikes, and we'll explain that next. To understand Trump's threat that future action would be far worse, we need to look back at June 21st and 22nd, 2025, just 7 months ago. In what was called Operation Midnight Hammer, the United States launched a massive precision strike on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities: Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. 7 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, among the most advanced aircraft in the US arsenal, dropped 14 massive ordnance penetrators. These are 30,000-pound bunker-busting bombs designed to destroy underground facilities. F-35s and F-22s provided escort. Submarines launched over 24 Tomahawk cruise missiles. In total, about 125 aircraft and 4,000 personnel participated in a 25-minute operation that severely damaged Iran's nuclear program and set it back by months.
Here's how it unfolded. This wasn't a prolonged campaign. It was surgical, coordinated, and over in less than half an hour. The operation targeted Iran's most critical nuclear enrichment and research sites: Fordo, which is buried deep underground in a mountain; Natanz, Iran's primary enrichment facility; and Isfahan, a major uranium conversion site. The next day, Iran retaliated by launching missiles at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, a major U.S. hub. Fortunately, there were no casualties, but it showed that Iran was willing and able to strike back at American forces. Now, 7 months later, Trump is saying the next operation would be far worse than that. Let that sink in for a moment. So why is this happening now? The primary stated reason is nuclear weapons. The 2015 nuclear deal, the JCPOA, collapsed after the U.S. withdrew in 2018. Since then, Iran has steadily advanced its uranium enrichment, getting closer to weapons-grade material. The June 2025 strikes slowed that progress, but didn't stop it entirely. Trump is demanding a new, stricter deal: no nuclear weapons, limits on ballistic missiles, and regional de-escalation. He's essentially trying to use military pressure to force Iran back to the negotiating table. But there's another factor at play here that's equally important. Since late December 2025, Iran has been rocked by massive nationwide protests. The trigger was economic collapse, hyperinflation, a crashing currency, widespread unemployment. People are struggling to afford basic necessities. The Iranian regime has responded with a brutal crackdown. Security forces have used live ammunition against protesters. Thousands have been arrested. Internet access has been severely restricted. Trump initially linked this naval deployment to protecting Iranian protesters from their own government. While he's since focused more on the nuclear issue, this internal instability adds another layer of pressure on Tehran, and another reason the regime might feel backed into a corner. So what happens next? Let's walk through 4 possible scenarios, from best case to worst case. Scenario 1, diplomatic breakthrough. Iran returns to negotiations, and both sides find a face-saving compromise, perhaps through European or regional mediators. Honestly, this seems unlikely right now. Iran has made clear it won't negotiate under threat, and Trump has shown no signs of backing down. But diplomacy can surprise us. Sometimes the brink of war focuses minds in unexpected ways. Scenario 2, a limited U.S. strike. This would look similar to June 2025. Targeted hits on remaining nuclear facilities, IRGC command centers, or perhaps forces involved in suppressing protests. The goal would be to degrade Iran's capabilities without triggering full-scale war. Quick, precise, and then a return to diplomatic pressure. The risk? Even a limited strike could spiral. Iran has proven it will retaliate, and each round of tit-for-tat escalation makes the next round more dangerous. Scenario 3, major escalation. This is the nightmare scenario, a sustained U.S. air and naval campaign against Iran. Iran responds with ballistic missile attacks on U.S. bases across the region, targeting Gulf shipping, and potentially striking Israel. Iranian proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthis in Yemen, activate across multiple fronts. And here's the global choke point everyone's watching: the Strait of Hormuz. About 20% of the world's oil passes through that narrow waterway. If Iran blocks or threatens it, we're looking at a global energy crisis. This scenario would reshape the Middle East and send shockwaves through the global economy. Scenario 4, de-escalation. The U.S. pulls back from military action, instead relying on allies and increased sanctions. We're already seeing movement here. European nations are considering new sanctions on the IRGC and possibly designating it as a terrorist organization. The UK and EU could mediate between Washington and Tehran. This would avoid immediate conflict, but it wouldn't solve the underlying issues. Iran's nuclear program, regional tensions, and internal instability would all remain.
No matter which scenario unfolds, the impacts will be felt globally. Let's start with energy. Oil prices have already risen more than 1.5% since Trump's announcement. Brent crude is around $69 per barrel, West Texas Intermediate around $64. That might not sound dramatic, but we're in the early stages. If conflict erupts, especially if the Strait of Hormuz is threatened, we could see oil prices spike by 20, 30, even 50%. That means higher gas prices, increased shipping costs, and inflationary pressure on everything from groceries to airline tickets. The global economy is still recovering from previous shocks. An energy crisis now could trigger a broader economic downturn. For the Middle East, the stakes are even higher. A conflict could mean attacks on Gulf infrastructure, oil facilities, ports, desalination plants that provide drinking water. Israel could be drawn in, either as a target of Iranian missiles or as a US ally joining the fight. We could see massive refugee flows as civilians flee conflict zones. Sectarian tensions between Sunni and Shia communities could explode. Countries like Iraq, Lebanon, and Yemen, already fragile, could destabilize further. And let's not forget, US service members stationed throughout the region would be in harm's way. We're talking about potentially thousands of American troops under threat of missile and drone attacks. On the world stage, this crisis is creating new fault lines. Russia and China are backing Iran diplomatically, condemning US aggression and calling for restraint. This isn't just about the Middle East, it's about challenging American power and influence globally. If the US strikes Iran, expect emergency UN Security Council meetings, international condemnation, and deeper cooperation between authoritarian regimes who see this as precedent for what could happen to them. The West is also divided. While some European allies support pressure on Iran's nuclear program, many are nervous about military action and its consequences. NATO unity could be tested. Let's be clear about what's at stake here. On one hand, there's a legitimate international concern about Iran developing nuclear weapons. A nuclear-armed Iran would fundamentally change the security dynamics of the Middle East and beyond. The US and its allies argue that pressure, even military pressure, may be necessary to prevent that. On the other hand, military action carries enormous risks: civilian casualties, regional war, economic crisis, escalation that spirals beyond anyone's control. Both sides have shown they're willing to fight. Both have also left room for diplomacy. The question is whether pride, politics, and pressure will close that window, or whether cooler heads will prevail.
We are on a mission to reach 10,000 subscribers here on First Stream News. Every single subscription helps us grow and deliver even more breaking news and deeper analysis to you. Please help us out by hitting that subscribe button.